My family forced me to give my homeless sister $800 a month. But when I checked her Venmo and saw where my money was going, I contacted her landlord and left them all speechless. I'm 23 years old. I'm in college on a full scholarship and working two part-time jobs, and I need to tell this story because it's literally been consuming me for months, and I'm only now starting to process everything that happened. The thing is, I always knew my family preferred my sister Ashley. You know, that kind of thing, where when you're a kid you think maybe you're imagining it, but then you grow up and realize that no, you're definitely not imagining it. Ashley is 25 now, 2 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, she's been the family's golden child. Like the one who can do no wrong, the perfect princess that everyone has to protect and help no matter how irresponsible she is. I, on the other hand, was always the kid who had to figure things out on his own, the responsible one, the one who didn't cause problems, and apparently that meant I didn't need the same attention or support that she did. Growing up was insane. Seriously. Ashley could come home at 3 in the morning in high school and my parents would barely say anything, but if I came home 15 minutes past curfew, I'd get an hour-long lecture. She failed like 3 classes her senior year, and my parents paid for super expensive tutoring and still consoled her, saying it wasn't her fault, that the teachers were too strict, while I had to maintain a perfect GPA so as not to disappoint anyone. When she turned 18, my parents bought her a car. Nothing too fancy, but like a 2016 Honda Civic, and when I turned 18, they gave me a birthday card with $50 inside and told me they were proud of me for getting that college scholarship. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was grateful for the $50 and the scholarship was amazing, but you see the difference? It was always like that. She got everything while I had to earn it. College was my escape, honestly. I got away from home, got a job at a campus coffee shop, and another one on weekends at an electronics store, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something that was mine, something that had nothing to do with Ashley or living in her shadow. My grades were excellent. I was saving money. I had good friends, and honestly, I thought I'd finally managed to separate myself from all that toxic family dynamic. But I guess you never really escape your family, right? They always find a way to drag you back. It all started like 8 months ago, around March, I think, when my mom called me on a Sunday afternoon. Right from the tone of her voice, I knew something was wrong. She had that voice of, "I need to ask you a favor, but I'm going to make it sound like it's a family emergency." She told me Ashley was going through a really hard time, that she was struggling to pay her rent and needed help. Apparently, Ashley was working at some beauty salon or something. I'm not really sure because she changed jobs every 2 months, and according to my mom, she wasn't doing well financially. My first, I thought was, well, maybe she should get a more stable job or learn to manage her money, but obviously I didn't say that out loud. My mom kept explaining that Ashley was really stressed, that she was about to be evicted, that she had no one else to turn to, and then came the low blow. She asked if I could help pay her rent for a few months, until she got stabilized. I sat there in my tiny shared dorm room, looking out the window and thinking about how absurd this was. I was working 2 jobs and taking 18 credits per semester, basically living off ramen and whatever I could get free at campus events, and they were asking me to give money to my sister who, looking back, probably made more than me when she actually worked. But here's the thing with family manipulation, right? They make you feel guilty for even questioning the request. My mom kept talking about how we're family, and family supports each other, and how Ashley really needed me right now, and how it would only be temporary, maybe 2 or 3 months at most. And then, because apparently that wasn't enough pressure, my dad got on the call and basically repeated everything my mom had said, but with that disappointed tone that makes you feel like you're the worst person in the world. So I said yes, because what else was I going to do? They made me feel like I'd be a horrible, selfish brother if I refused. We agreed I'd send her $800 a month for her rent, which honestly was more than what I was paying for my shared dorm room on campus. But according to my parents, that was the cost of her apartment, and she had no way to pay it. I started sending her the money in April, and let me tell you, that $800 came straight out of my savings because it's not like I was swimming in cash with my part-time jobs. I had to cut back on my expenses even more. Like I started walking everywhere instead of taking the bus to save on transportation. I stopped buying coffee, which was rough because I literally worked at a coffee shop, and the smell tortured me all day. And I basically stopped going out with my friends because I couldn't afford to spend money on anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. For the first few weeks, everything seemed fine. I mean, Ashley would send me occasional text messages thanking me and saying things would get better soon, and I felt good, supposedly helping. But then, like a month and a half into sending her money, I started noticing something weird. Ashley was posting on Instagram and Facebook all the time, like photos at nice restaurants, buying new clothes, going out to bars with friends, basically living her best life while I was eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch and dinner. At first I thought, well, maybe they're old photos or maybe someone else is paying when she goes out. I didn't want to be that paranoid brother questioning everything. But the more I saw her posts, the more it bothered me, because there was literally a photo of her at a concert that must have cost at least $150 for the ticket. And this was like 2 weeks after my parents told me she was about to be evicted for not being able to pay her rent. This is where things get interesting, because I didn't say anything to Ashley or my parents right away. Part of me felt like I was being unfair, that maybe she'd gotten the money for those things some other way, or that she deserved to be able to enjoy her life a little even while being in financial trouble. But the other part of me, the rational part, was starting to suspect something didn't add up. So I did something I probably shouldn't have done, but honestly was the best thing I could have done. I checked Venmo. Ashley and I were friends on Venmo because I once paid her share of a birthday gift for my mom through there, and it turns out she didn't have her account on private, so I could see all her transactions. And there it was, clear as day, evidence that the whole thing was one giant lie. She was sending money to someone, named Dylan, like $200 or $300 at a time, multiple times a month, with stupid little notes like, for the usual, or love you babe, or heart emojis. I looked up who this Dylan was on her social media and, guess what? He was her ex-boyfriend, a guy I met like twice at family gatherings years ago, and who gave me the worst vibes even then. This dude basically didn't work, spent all day playing video games and posting stuff on Facebook about his investments that obviously were never going anywhere, and apparently Ashley was giving my money to him. Not the money she supposedly needed for rent. No, the money that I was earning working 2 jobs while going to school full-time was going straight to her loser ex-boyfriend. I got angry, like really furious in a way I'd never been before. My hands were shaking as I kept scrolling through her transactions, seeing my money, my effort, being wasted on this guy who probably didn't even appreciate where it was coming from. I called my cousin Jordan. He was like 28 at the time and had always been the only person in my family who understood me, and told him everything. Jordan had always seen through Ashley's bullshit. He was probably the only person in the family who didn't treat her like she was a fragile princess who needed constant protection. He told me I needed to confront Ashley directly, that I shouldn't say anything to my parents yet because they'd probably just defend her, and that I should go to her apartment with evidence so she couldn't lie. So that's exactly what I did. Jordan offered to come with me for moral support, which I honestly appreciated because I wasn't sure I could do this alone. We went on a Saturday afternoon, unannounced, because I wanted to catch her off guard. When we got to her apartment, which by the way looked pretty decent for someone who was supposedly about to be evicted, we rang the doorbell like 5 times before she finally opened the door. She looked surprised to see us, like genuinely. It wasn't expecting me to just show up like that, and I tried to stay calm, but basically immediately asked her about Dylan and the money. The look on her face was total panic, you know? That moment when someone knows they're caught but still hasn't decided whether they're going to admit it or try to lie their way out of the situation. She tried to deny it at first, saying she didn't know what I was talking about, that Dylan was just a friend, that those transactions were for other things. I showed her the screenshots I'd taken of her Venmo, the dates that matched exactly with when I was sending her money, the amounts that were suspiciously similar to what I was giving her. Jordan was standing there next to me, not saying anything but being an incredible silent support, and finally, Ashley broke down. She started crying, which was her classic move when she couldn't manipulate a situation any other way, and admitted that yes, she had been giving money to Dylan. But then she came up with the whole story about how he really needed her, how he was going through a hard time and she just wanted to help him, how she knew it was wrong but that she loved me and appreciated my help. I asked her directly about her rent, whether she was really at risk of being evicted or if that was also a lie. She went quiet for a moment too long, and there I had my answer. She told me that, well, Technically, she had been late on some payments, but not as much as my parents had told me, and that she thought if I knew the complete truth, I wouldn't want to help. She was right about that, but not in the way she thought. I told her it was over, that I wasn't going to give her another cent, and that I was going to tell our parents exactly what she'd been doing. She went into total panic mode then, begged me not to tell them, saying they wouldn't understand, that they'd be angry with her, that it would ruin her relationship. And I was standing there thinking, seriously? Does she really think she's going to get away with this? But part of me also knew she was right about something. Our parents would probably find some way to justify her actions or make me feel guilty for making a big deal out of this. That's the thing with favoritism, right? No matter how obviously wrong the favored person is, they always find a way to defend them. Jordan and I left after that, and I felt weird, like angry, but also strangely relieved to finally know the truth. Jordan told me I did the right thing, confronting her, that I needed to stand firm and not let them manipulate me again. But he also warned me that when I told my parents, I needed to be prepared for them not to react the way I expected or wanted. He was completely right. Though at that moment, I still had some hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd see how badly Ashley had behaved and hold her accountable for once in her life. I called them that night, like at 8 or 9, and told them everything. And let me tell you, the response was exactly what Jordan had predicted, but somehow worse than I imagined. At first, there was silence. Then my mom started with how Ashley was going through a lot and was probably confused, that Dylan was manipulative and taking advantage of her, that I didn't understand how hard it was for Ashley to be in a relationship like that. My dad said yes. What Ashley did was wrong, but that I was being too hard on her. That family forgives and moves forward, that this shouldn't ruin our relationship as siblings. At no point did they say, "Wow, Ethan, we're sorry for putting you in this position," or "Thank you for helping even when you didn't have to," or "We're going to have a serious talk with Ashley about this." Nothing. I told them I wasn't going to send any more money, and that Ashley needed to figure out her own problems, like the adult she was. My mom got upset with me then, saying I was being selfish and cruel, that Ashley needed me, and I was turning my back on her in her time of need. I was literally turning my back after she lied to me and stole my money for months, but sure, I was the bad guy. I hung up the phone after that because I couldn't keep listening to them defend the indefensible, and I sat in my room feeling completely defeated. I had hoped that maybe this time would be different, that they'd finally see Ashley for what she really was, but nothing had changed. She was still the golden child, and I was still the one expected to put up with everything in silence. The next few weeks were weird. Ashley would text me every couple of days, apologizing and saying she was so sorry and that she'd change, but I didn't respond. My parents would call occasionally, trying to guilt-trip me or convince me to make peace with Ashley, as if I was the one who needed to apologize. I stood firm in my decision not to give her any more money, and honestly, I started feeling better, like I'd finally established a boundary I should have established years ago. But then, like 6 weeks after a whole confrontation, something happened that changed everything completely. It was a Thursday night, like 11 o'clock, and I was studying for an exam when I heard someone knocking on my campus apartment door. I thought it was my roommate who'd forgotten his keys again, but when I opened the door, it was Dylan. Yes, that Dylan, Ashley's loser ex-boyfriend, standing there at my door. He looked bad, like he'd clearly been drinking, with wrinkled clothes and smelling of alcohol and cigarettes, and he had this look in his eyes that immediately made me nervous. He asked if we could talk, and my first instinct was to slam the door in his face, but something about the way he was talking, like desperate and defeated, made me hesitate. I told him we had to stay outside because I wasn't going to let him into my apartment, and we stood in the hallway while he started telling me this completely crazy story. Basically, he told me that Ashley had left him, that she'd been using him this whole time, and now she'd dumped him with nothing. I asked him why the hell he was telling me this, and then he dropped the bomb. Ashley has a son. I stood there trying to process what he'd just said, because that made no sense whatsoever. Ashley has a son? A baby? Whose? When? Dylan told me the kid is 2 years old, that he's his, and that Ashley had been hiding him from everyone except our parents. Apparently the kid lived with a friend of Ashley's or something, or sometimes with our parents, and Ashley would go visit him, but kept his entire existence secret from me and the rest of the extended family. The money she'd been sending Dylan was supposedly to keep the secret and so he wouldn't cause trouble, basically blackmail. I couldn't believe it. I literally stood there thinking this had to be some kind of cruel joke or that Dylan was lying for some reason, but the more he talked, the more everything made sense in a horrible, twisted way. The reason Ashley always needed money, why our parents always defended her no matter what, why there was so much pressure for me to help her without asking questions. Everyone knew except me. My entire family knew Ashley had a son and no one had told me anything. They'd kept me completely in the dark while asking me to subsidize her life with my hard-earned money. I asked Dylan why he was telling me this now, and he basically admitted he was mad at Ashley for leaving him and wanted to cause trouble. I didn't care about his motivation, honestly. I just wanted to know if he was telling the truth. He showed me some photos on his phone of him with a small child who, I'm not gonna lie, had features that could have been from our family. But the photos alone weren't enough proof for me. I told him to leave and close the door, then stayed up all night trying to decide what to do with this information. The next morning, I called Jordan again and told him what had happened. Jordan went quiet for a moment and then said something that completely broke me. I always suspected there was something else. Your mom mentioned something about babysitting like a year ago, but when I asked her about it, she changed the subject quickly. So, Jordan had also noticed something weird but hadn't said anything because he wasn't sure. I felt betrayed in a way I can't even adequately describe. Like my entire family life was a lie and I was the only one not in on the secret. I decided to confront my parents directly, but this time not over the phone. I drove like 3 hours back to my hometown that same day, unannounced, and got to the house around 2 in the afternoon. My mom was there alone. My dad was at work, and when she opened the door and saw me, the expression on her face told me everything I needed to know. I asked her directly, "Does Ashley have a son?" And she went pale. She tried to deny it at first, asking who had told me that and saying it was rumors, but I wasn't in the mood for more lies. I told her Dylan had come to my apartment and told me everything, and that I wanted the truth right now. My mom collapsed into a kitchen chair and admitted that yes, Ashley had a 2-year-old son named, I don't even remember the name now, something common. She explained that Ashley had gotten pregnant like 3 years ago, that it had been an accident with Dylan, and that she didn't know what to do. According to my mom, Ashley was scared and embarrassed, and begged our parents not to tell me because she knew I would judge her. My mom talked about how they'd been helping Ashley with the child, paying for daycare and other things, and that's why they were always asking me to help her financially, because they were already spending a lot on the kid. I asked her why they couldn't just tell me the truth, why they had to lie and manipulate me into giving money without knowing what it was really for. My mom said something about how they didn't want me to change my opinion of Ashley, that she was doing the best she could as a young mother, and that they thought it was easier to just not tell me. I told her that wasn't their decision to make, that I had a right to know what was happening in my own family, especially when they were asking me for money based on lies. My dad got home like an hour later and basically repeated everything my mom had said, adding that they'd done what they thought was best for everyone. I told them I would never trust them again, that they had used and manipulated me, and that Ashley needed to start acting like a responsible adult instead of relying on everyone else to solve her problems. My dad got angry then and told me I was being immature and that someday I'd understand when I had my own kids. I told him that when I had kids, I wouldn't lie to them or favor one over the other the way they had done. I left that house knowing something had permanently changed in my relationship with my family. It wasn't just the lie about the child, though that was huge. It was the complete pattern of years of favoritism, manipulation, and treating me like my only purpose was to support Ashley no matter how much it cost me. I drove back to college feeling completely empty, but also strangely free, like I'd finally seen the whole situation clearly for the first time. Things calmed down for a few weeks after that. No one called me, and I certainly didn't contact anyone. I focused on my classes and my jobs, trying to recover some of the normalcy I'd lost in all this drama. But then, like a month later, I got a text message from Ashley that was basically a plea. She was being evicted from her apartment. For real this time, she was like 2 months behind on rent, and the landlord had already started the official eviction process. She asked me for help, saying she had nowhere to go with her son, that our parents couldn't help her anymore, that I was her only option. Here's the thing. Part of me felt sorry for the kid, because it wasn't his fault to have an irresponsible mother and a dysfunctional family. But the bigger part of me knew that if I gave in now, if I gave her money again, I'd only be perpetuating the same cycle I'd been trying to break. I replied that I was sorry about her situation, but that I couldn't help her, that she needed to figure this out on her own or ask our parents for help or social services. She called me like 20 times after that, but I didn't answer. And eventually she stopped trying. What I did next was probably vindictive and petty, but honestly, I don't regret it. I contacted Ashley's landlord, found his information through public records, and sent him an email telling him about the Venmo transactions and how Ashley had been receiving money from family but was using it for other things instead of paying rent. I don't know if that changed anything legally, but it made me feel like I was finally taking some kind of control over a situation where I'd always been made to feel powerless. Ashley ended up moving back in with our parents, with her son. And from what I last heard, she's still there. My parents called me like 2 months ago, asking me for more financial help. Not for Ashley specifically this time, but for family expenses, because they're struggling with having 2 more people living with them. I told them no, that it was no longer my responsibility to solve the problems they'd created themselves by enabling Ashley throughout her entire life. My mom cried on the phone, and my dad told me I was being cruel, and that someday I'd regret this decision. Maybe they're right. Maybe someday I'll regret cutting off my family this way, but right now I feel freer and less stressed than I've been in years. I cut contact with all of them like 6 weeks ago. I blocked Ashley on everything, limited what my parents can see on my social media, and basically decided I needed to focus on my own life and my own future without constantly worrying about my family's dramas and demands. Jordan has supported me in this decision, says, "It's the healthiest thing I could do, and that I don't have to feel guilty about setting boundaries. Some people in my extended family think I'm overreacting or being too harsh, but none of them really know the whole story or what it was like growing up always being second best. I'm graduating in December, just a few months away, and I already have a job offer in another city like 4 hours from where I grew up. I'm going to take that job, and I'm going to start over in a place where I don't have to worry about my family showing up, asking for money or support that I can't or don't want to give. I know this probably sounds cold or selfish to some people, but after 23 years of being the responsible son who always had to sacrifice himself for his irresponsible sister, I think I deserve the chance to live my life for myself. Last week, my cousin Jordan asked me if I ever thought about reconnecting with my family. I told him honestly I don't know. That maybe in a few years when I've processed all of this, and when they acknowledge what they did wrong, but that right now I need this space. He asked me if I felt guilty about cutting contact, and the truth is that sometimes I do, but most of the time I just feel relieved. Relieved not to have to worry about the next call asking for money, relieved not to have to pretend everything's okay when it clearly isn't, relieved to finally be able to focus on building my own life without constantly being dragged backward by my family's expectations and demands. And that's where I am now, I guess. About to graduate, about to start a new chapter, and for the first time in my life, feeling like I'm truly in control of my own future. I don't know if I'll ever have a normal relationship with my family, or if Ashley will ever grow up and take responsibility for her life, or if my parents will realize how their favoritism damaged both of us in different ways. But what I do know is that it's no longer my job to fix their problems, or sacrifice my own well-being for theirs. And that, after everything that happened, feels like enough for now.